Mud blocks, stone flooring, if energy use, rainwater harvesting, recycling wastewater, and other sustainability mantras. We keep hearing about these in articles and other policy documents, but how can we take them from discourse to practice? Let's take green homes, for example. The residential market had taken a huge slump last year, but there is a scope for revival this year, according to the real estate agencies. When it is like that, when you're buying or refurbishing a home, how can you actually make it green? There are a lot of people who are actively considering going green, but there are also roadblocks on the way. Are they thwarted by the lack of real usage of knowledge, or are they stumbling on the how do I go about it block? What exactly is stopping them? So here we are interviewing Anupama Mohan Ram today. Anupama, this interview is to clear some fundamental doubts about sustainability and what exactly makes green homes. And so Anupama is an architect with a passion for environmental sustainability. She is a co-founder and head of Green Evolution, an architecture firm that designs beautiful and energy efficient homes. During her practice in the US for nearly 10 years, Anupama was involved in the design of multiple design projects, including schools, offices, and banks. Back home in Chennai and also in Tamil Nadu, she has designed many schools, including the school KFI and Hand in Hand Academy of Kanchipur and many residential houses in and around Chennai. So, for this interview, we have gathered questions from our readers. There are some many basic questions from information about policies. Anupama will now be answering those questions for us. So, here we go. The first question is from Kenneth. He's an entrepreneur. And let me read out the question for you, Anupama. So there's a basic question, but there's what the readers should know. Like for many people who doesn't know what green homes means, right? So what is the first step involved in construction of a green building?
Okay, I would say the first step is before you build, you look at the site, right? Your plot. And
Yes.
if there is a tree on site, I would leave that intact, especially if there's a mature tree, right? If it's a smaller tree, I would try to transplant it. So to me, that's the first step, check out the vegetation, because what we're doing by building is we are actually spoiling the land, right? I mean,
True.
these trees and vegetation where their soil is, like the topsoil is the most fertile after thousands of years of erosion, and now you're going to clear it. And because the first step, the reason why I'm saying this is the first step is that's the first step builders or typically people do, right? Let me clear the site, let me make it like flat
I think
land,
that's
and
the
then
easier option, right?
easier option. So you have your whole free site, right? It's much more
Hmm.
challenging now to say, okay, what am I? This tree has been here for 50 years. Now, should I destroy this tree, or should I, we know the benefits of having vegetation. So what can we do, even in a constrained site? Can we do something to retain most of the vegetation, or consider transplanting it? Or, I mean, there are, people come to us with very small sites, where it's very, very tough. We say, okay, fine. If you do have to bring something down, then you plant 3 trees in its place or something, so you're not blindly clearing. So that is the first step. Be conscious of the green cover that we have now. Um, and so I think if he was asking for the first step, this is what I would say. And then
Okay.
I would go about then there are other strategies for design. So, yeah.
Okay. So the other steps would be like if you want to
Yeah, the
say the
other,
basic ones.
yeah. So the other basic step would be I would make sure the building is designed as per the climate, right? So I would look at, like in Chennai, for example, we need a lot of cross ventilation. So I would look at the breeze direction and make sure my building is oriented towards the breeze. So here in Chennai, we are trying to avoid. So, okay, so the tree cover is one big thing. And the second, a big thing I would say is cut down your energy use, right? And then cut down your water use, because these are the things we tap from our environment. And after occupying, you're going to use a lot of energy and water. So, you look at the site and build sensibly. Make sure you're in Chennai, your buildings don't face west, in the sense your, commonly used spaces don't. So it's called passive solar design, right? You look at the orientation of the site and you locate your building in such a way that you get enough ventilation through. So you're trying to cut down on air conditioning use.
True.
And the other thing I would do is make sure all your spaces get natural daylight, right? So that's when you don't have to turn on lights during the day. So if you're in your home, you're turning on lights during the day, then I would say it's not
That's
very
an utter
good design.
failure.
Yeah, because
Design wise.
yeah. So natural light, and we all know during the pandemic how affected we were, right? I mean, the lack of natural light, lack of breeze. We know the lack what the effects are on ourselves. So it's a big health concern for us, not only for the environment, it's for our own health, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we need to see the sun, right? And we need to see outdoors. So for me, even the visual access to outdoors will be important.
Hmm.
So I don't, if you're like sitting in this box and, cutting yourself off from the outdoors, that's again not very green, right? I mean, we need to
Yes.
kind of have the visual access. We are so connected to the environment. I mean, as human beings,
Yeah.
we are actually part of part of nature, right? So we need
Hmm.
that connect all the time. So that would be the second step. Design your building so it's kind of getting enough breeze. Study the breeze on site, especially during summer. That's when you need the breeze ventilation through. And study the daylight. Look at, okay, which of these spaces would I occupy the most? Like some people tell us they spend most of their time in their bedrooms, right? Because their working space is also the bedroom. And
Exactly.
say, I don't use my living room. So in that case, I would make sure the bedroom gets enough light and ventilation for them to, because that's where they mostly use.
So you
So
were
yeah.
telling me about the breeze, the
Yes.
sight, and some sunlight.
Yeah,
So
natural light, ventilation I would want in my home. So I would design the building in such a way that there is enough light and ventilation for me when I'm inside. And
okay.
so that is what will lead to the next thing, right? I would save on my energy bills because of these two factors, which I'm already considering in the design stage itself. So it's not
Okay.
that I'm blindly building something and then trying to see, okay, how can I save my electricity, right? So you're doing whatever you can initially by locating the building on the site in such a way that it gets adequate light and ventilation. And then the
Okay.
next I would do is look at materials. I would look at materials that are healthy for me, that would also not bring in too much heat, especially in a place like Chennai. And then water. How do I think, how do I make low use, consume less water? How do I make sure my groundwater, is adequate for me 25 years from now, right?
Yeah.
So we need to do something to keep recharging our groundwater. So those are all secondary things. But like I said, the first thing is, when you design something new, you make sure you're designing it right in the first
Yeah.
place. Yeah.
True. So yeah. So here is another question from Kenneth himself. How does a green building benefit society? Could you talk about the environmental, economical, and social impacts, both in the building level and also on the global scale?
Yes, that's a very interesting question because I know how does green building pervade like all of this, right? It is not just the environment. So that is very relevant. One thing I would say is definitely we know it helps the environment, right? Because you're not burning coal to use energy. You're trying to conserve water, which is what we need. We know water scarcity is already there globally, right? So whatever little bit we can do for the environment. So environment wise, it is definitely a given. In terms of social and economic impacts, one of the things we do in our buildings, in our designs, is make sure we engage, our local art, craft, local materials, local tradition is, I feel it's lost. I mean, so like for example, today, if I were to use Atangudi tiles, the trade itself, it's a family-based business, right? That gave employment to so many people locally, right? And that is actually art. So our local hand, there's a lot of like red oxide floors. It's all handmade, thatch. So all that has disappeared. So if you can bring that back, that will improve your local economy, right? It will give jobs to your the local district. So, can you hear me, Lasya?
Yes, yes. Yeah, go
Okay,
on,
okay,
Anupa.
yeah. So that is how you revive the local economy, because we know these materials are actually good for us. They're also good for the environment, and they also were very much a part of
The local culture.
is giving employment to so many people. And
Okay.
as far as social impact, I would talk about things like a lot of outdoor spaces where people can interact. Don't close yourself off into your homes, right? So if you give people enough good quality and safe outdoor spaces, like at the urban level or the city level, then obviously there's going to be much more social mingling, right? I mean, why do we need air-conditioned malls, completely covered malls, right? I mean, you're just like packed in there, and I get very stressed, 2 hours in a mall, and I'm like, okay, now. So once in a while, I do go. My daughters want to go, and I'm okay with it. I say, okay, fine, it's been a month, whatever. And then again, it leads to, okay, after like an hour and a half or two, I'm like, when are we leaving? To get out. So I would, even in Chicago, there were outdoor malls, like what they call strip malls. I think they started a few on ECR, but I don't know if it's not. I mean, even now, Express Avenue and Phoenix and all the indoor malls are much more popular. So why don't we design our urban, at a city level? Make it more user friendly. So you give them more opportunities for people to interact, socialize. In a very healthy setting, right? It doesn't have to be enclosed spaces where you can spend much more time. Rather than feeling claustrophobic or worrying about your air conditioning bills, right? I mean, when you're
Yeah.
so I feel that, and global level, of course, climate change is a given now. um, Luckily, actually, after the pandemic, we are seeing more interest, as you rightly said in your introduction. People are asking for green homes. They understand the environmental impact we have had, right? I mean, you see when the beach first opened, before the beaches opened, or you see the environment was much more, air pollution was much less. So I think people are, which is a good thing, they're finally starting to understand we are the cause of environmental damage, right?
Yes.
Somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
So, and that is, climate change is real. Global warming is a reality. So whatever bit we do at a global level, that's going to make an impact, right? I mean, I think globally, yeah, it is very relevant. It will have a global impact. I mean, that's how we should look at it, right? What I do, whatever water I save, will percolate, to the neighborhood level, to the city level, and ultimately that is where, we're all part of the same earth. So it is a
Yeah.
global, it's one atmosphere. So, that way I think it's all interconnected. So I
Great.
feel very relevant. Yeah.
So actually, I'm going to jump to another question now because you were talking about the locally sourced
Yeah.
uh, tiles or the other equipments. So this is a question from one of the readers. She asked, her name is Harika, and she asked, what are the materials that are native to Tamil Nadu that make up for building a green home?
Yeah. Okay, if you look at Tamil Nadu itself, I had already mentioned Athangudi tiles. It is
Yes.
very much a part of Athangudi. So the soil is taken from Athangudi. The soil has the properties for in them to take and make the tiles. So it is very much our own, made in Tamil Nadu. Everything is sourced here. So that is one thing that we always, we try to bring in Athangudi tiles, because it's handmade, it's less polluting, it is local, it gives employment, and it's beautiful, right? It's aesthetically so pretty. Most of the designs are. So Athangudi tiles are sourced here. And of course, if you talk about sourcing in Tamil Nadu itself, granite, the temple granite near Mahabalipuram, there are a lot of rock granite that's here. But otherwise, Tamil Nadu itself, okay, one thing we do in our projects, I mean, if we say green, we don't look at Tamil Nadu versus Karnataka versus Andhra. What we do is we take a radius of 100 or 200 kilometers and say it could be in Andhra, right? So I could still get my natural stone or granite or kadapa within a 100-kilometer radius, right? So it doesn't have to be a border of each state. I would look at it as regional material, so they're not being transported for thousands of kilometers.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to avoid the pollution during transportation. So if you
True.
look at it that way, I mean, some places in Tamil Nadu are still further away for me than some places in Andhra, for example. So let's not restrict ourselves to Tamil Nadu. I think you can look at, if you're looking at a green building, let's say, we look at materials within a so many kilometer radius.
Yeah.
But yeah, art and craft of Tamil Nadu, of course, is like red oxide floors. It's a craft that's been developed in the state. So bamboo, thatch, river reed thatch, that is found a lot in the riverbeds. So thatch is a material that is local. I mean, it's local everywhere. If you look at mud, it's found everywhere, right? So
Yeah.
I guess if she's asking specific to Tamil Nadu, what we would use is Athangudi tiles. And red oxide, of course, is cement mixed with pigment, but the trade has been born here.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, so I would look at it as a radius from where I am and say, that's local.
Okay. So yeah, let's move on to another question. That's interesting. I didn't know Tamil Nadu had, or for that matter, South India had a lot of resources like this. That's
Yes,
information
yeah.
for me. So now I would like to take a question from the cost factor. Like there is a general perception that green homes are costly. Is that a myth? So this is a question from Shubha Kirtana. She's a journalist and a regular reader of Citizen Matters. So what's your answer for her?
Yeah, green homes. What we do is there are two parts of how we design green buildings. One is in the design itself, like what I talked about. Making sure your building is positioned so you get adequate light and ventilation. Now that's not more expensive. It is just how you start your design, right? The way you design. So that is part of it. The second thing we do is the technology, right? There's solar, there is water treatment. So those are the things that actually add cost. So when you look at green buildings, the technology part of it, because we use a lot of water meters, so we need to monitor the water use, because that's important, right? You need to know how much water you're consuming.
Exactly.
If you don't know, because right now we are not built for that. Like if you live in apartments, nobody, if your flat, you could be like wasting, using a lot of water compared to the flat next door. I think people have to be compensated for, how much water they use.
Yeah.
So water meters, things like that. So it is actually right now. What we are seeing is it is slightly more expensive, but it is not by that much. I would say it's about 5% more if you consider all the technologies. But the big thing is it's not the initial cost, right? The initial
You'll
cost
get
is more.
returns.
Yes, it is your life cycle cost, right? How much are you saving? Because right now, if you look at solar, we are seeing a payback in about 3 to 4 years. That's the cost of solar. It's come down. When I moved to Chennai, that was in 2006, the cost of solar was like some 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs per kilowatt. Now it's down to 55,000 per kilowatt. So if there's more and more demand, then you can actually see the initial price come down. But the thing is, now we are seeing payback in about 3 to 4 years for solar. After that, it's free. So we should look at the life cycle cost of what you're doing, and then compare it. So if you do that, your buildings actually will be cheaper. If you take a 10-year period, these are all the things you'll be saving on, right? Water, because you're going to go, treat wastewater and reuse it. But that means you don't have to buy water 10 years from now, right? You don't have to spend on a lorry tanker of water. Another thing we do in our buildings is we do a lot of open brick structures. So which means it's exposed brick on the outside, because we feel that especially in green buildings, there's no need to unnecessarily use material. We don't like any of the luxury cladding. It's not required. It's not functional. So and we can even avoid plastering the ceiling. I don't know if in construction, people go and they want the clean finish on the ceiling.
Exactly.
So when they plaster the ceiling, obviously there'll be a lot of wastage, right? I mean, this poor guy is standing and applying his plaster, and half of it will be on the. You can't ask him to salvage every bit of the cement that falls. So so that way we try to avoid unnecessary use of material. So which means we save actually on the construction cost. We are able to generate savings there. And then we spend it on the technology. So if you do that, so if you do that, I would say we're saying about 5% more is what you need to spend, which is, I mean, most people for them, they are, if they're eco-conscious, they're very open to it. So it's not that much at all.
Okay, that's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
I
it used to be much more,
hmm,
in like 20 years from now, green buildings were kind of more, because technology was expensive, right?
true.
Now all that has come down. So if you design consciously, then you can definitely, almost keep it the same, or it's about 3 to 5% more. That's about it. Initial cost, and then you see the life cycle cost savings that you
Hmm,
get.
great.
I
So
hope that answers the
that's
question.
that's a really good answer. Like you spend where it is needed, but you save upon the rest. Yeah.
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah.
to put in a nutshell, that's what it is. So I have a question. Like when you just
Yeah.
no, this was as part of my research. I was just going through the green homes on YouTube. There's so many green homes in Chennai, but most of them are individual houses. I
Yeah.
haven't seen much of apartments. Is there a reason for that?
No, actually, there are apartments that are green rated. See, what happened is in 2008, there was a slump in the residential market. And at that time, there are these ratings called the green building ratings. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. There is a council called the Indian Green Building Council, and there is, of course, a US Green Building Council. So
Okay.
this council offers a rating system for buildings. So
Okay.
what you can do, it's like a checklist of points. You can say, okay, I've saved so much energy, so then you get 20 points for that, and you
Ah.
save so much water, you get 50. So finally you get a rating.
Hmm.
And thing is, when in 2008, when the market slumped, a lot of the builders of apartments wanted to differentiate themselves from the other, trying to market themselves. So they went in for the ratings. In fact, we've helped a lot of builders with ratings, even Akshaya Homes, and they've achieved green building ratings. So this was very popular, that 2008 to 15 time frame. So there are apartments that are green rated. So
What makes an apartment green rated,
yeah.
and what's the difference
Uh,
between green home and a green rated apartment?
Yeah, so green, it's very similar. It's if it's a green rated, green homes is the rating itself. So it could be for your own independent home, or it could be for apartments. So if I'm a builder building multiple apartments, I could apply for a rating for the entire apartment. It's still called a green homes rating. So
Okay.
what you would look at, but if I'm a homeowner and I want a rating for my home, it's still the same rating, except it's a smaller, home. Basically, it's the same thing. I mean, you have to save water, you have to have your water treatment system in place, you have to have solar in place. So they look at how much energy you save and how much water you're saving, what kind of materials you're using. So it is quite actually. It used to be popular. A few years from now, like up to 2015-16, these ratings were started to make people more eco-conscious. But what happened was, apartment buildings right now in Chennai, it's kind of taken a back step. But in places like West Bengal, even Maharashtra, there are a lot of incentives for builders to go green. So they say, if you get
Okay.
a rating done, then we will give you, so much FSI more, or you will save on your, you'll get a lower interest on your bank loans. So SBI had come up with a green home loan, but now all these incentives are not being applied in Tamil Nadu, which I actually should be. I think we need a lot of lobbying, because you're actually saving the government, right? I mean, electricity and water. So they should. A lot of the states are progressive, but not Tamil Nadu. So we're seeing less of the apartment
Hmm.
buildings right now going in for ratings, because for the builders, it's only for their own profit, that they look to basically build and sell.
Yeah, yeah.
But for individual homeowners, it's for their own use. If they know,
Hmm.
if they save water, then it's going to be 10
Hmm.
years from now. They know they'll have enough water, or they save
Yeah.
electricity. So we're seeing many more, especially after the last year. There are many more, we get a lot of interest in people who are building independent homes, who want to go green. So I mean, they look at how can they save water, save electricity, and make their own home, a better place to live in. So yeah, it's
True.
apartments itself is kind of a little low, until I think the government has to come out with incentives for builders, even for homeowners. Even the solar incentives, so difficult. They do have all this in their books, but so difficult.
The enforcement part
Yeah,
takes a hit.
yeah, you'll have to run around. It's really tough. I think maybe Citizen Matters can take it up to lobby the government for more green buildings, and I think
Definitely. I think,
people have
yeah,
to. It's
that
a
should be
public
the talking
service.
point. Yeah.
I think so because you're
That,
looking at a better, environmental quality in the state, right? I mean, that's what you should work towards. So yeah, that.
great. Okay. I'll go to the next question, which is also from Shubha Kirtana. She asks, wall paints play a really important role when it comes to planning green homes. So could you tell us about the eco paints and where can we source them actually?
Eco paints. See, right now, what we do is wall paints contain volatile organic compounds, right? These are compounds when
Mm.
they are emitted. See, when the paint dries, there's a lot of emissions. That's the paint smell that we get. But unfortunately, that has a lot of carbon, compounds like benzene and all that, which is harmful for us as well as harmful for the environment. So there are a lot of these, even Asian Paints and Nippon, they have what they call low VOC paints, but you have to ask them specifically for it. Again, there's not
Okay.
as much market, I mean, people don't know unless you tell them, you have to ask for paints with low VOC levels
Mm.
and
Mm.
non-lead based, no heavy metals. So there are paints. Even the normal manufacturers make paints. Zero
Mm.
VOC is the lowest VOC level. So we start with that, and you can go up to like 20 grams per liter or something. So even the regular manufacturers do have these low VOC paints. As far as natural paints itself, see, India is very behind. In the US, 20 years before, they had these clay-based paints, in the market. But we haven't. Somehow, there was one company in Bangalore that came up, and that's not functional anymore. So I think they couldn't, survive. But there is this a new. I mean, Asian Paints has a natural paint called Nilaya Organics. So they claim it's from casein and milk products, and so it's 95% organic. So that is one thing she could look for. It's called Nilaya Paints from Asian Paints. Again, I don't know how it is out in the market or in the shops. She needs to ask for it. And then there is this new paint that the government has launched. It's from the Khadi Gramodyog Bhavan, but we haven't used it yet. It's called Prakritik paints. It's supposed to be made from cow dung. But see, what we do is we need to check the data, right? Where are they? What are the materials that go into it? We before we recommend a paint, we make sure that we check all the specifications of the paint. So this government launched by Kadi is very recent, a month ago or something. So we that's something she can check out. It's called Prakritik, and
Okay.
by Khadi Gramodyog Bhavan is it's a central government initiative, and they claim they're using cow dung and the whitewash what we used to do traditionally. So, but that's very new. But other than that, Nilaya paints are what we have used and we can vouch for. And any of the paints from Asian or Nippon or Berger that they label as low VOC. So there should be a green label on the paint can. So any of that she can
Okay.
use. I mean, that's as good as it gets. So
Great. Okay. Okay. Here is a question from Subhashini Raja. She is an entrepreneur. She says, I'm refurbishing my duplex apartment soon. The apartment complex has no water treatment plants, but I want my apartment to be sustainable by way of water and power solutions. How do I do that? And is it possible to do this for my unit? One advantage is that I have independent pipelines to my apartment.
in an apartment, usually retrofitting wastewater system is very, very difficult. If in an independent home, it's easy to do because there's only one plumbing outlet. But in an apartment, because there are
I think
many
she means a duplex apartment, her
Is it
own.
in an apartment complex? I think that's what she's saying, right? She's in
Okay,
an
okay.
apartment complex. So there are probably multiple homes. I'm
Hmm.
figuring out. So what happens
Okay.
is the plumbing in multiple homes is it's all connected finally to one outlet. But she can check on that. She needs to check with her apartment, builders or whoever, to see how is the plumbing. Does each apartment have their own plumbing line? The outlet has to be separate. So if in her house, the inlet will be separate, but the outlet, the wastewater from the toilet flush and the kitchen wastewater, is it separated out? Usually what happens is they all join in different parts, and then there's only one outlet that goes out. So let her check. If it is separate, then she can do that. She can take her outlet pipes and take it to what we do is you can have a small biodigester. It's like a septic tank. It's buried underground if there is space on site. So, but I feel if she's living in an apartment, it will be a little difficult to do because most likely the outlets are all connected. So, but if first thing for her to do is check if the wastewater outlet is connected or it's separate for her home. If it is separate, then she can, if she has space on land, that's the next thing. In apartments, there's usually no space, right? Even if it's separate, then you start fighting with, because you need space to do the treatment. It's like a small treatment plant that you need to have, and it needs to be underground. So where is she going to keep that? So these are things she can check. And then she can always reach out to us once she checks if she wants to, reach out to see what we can do. If it is separated out, then we can always help her with that. The other thing, it's easier for her in an apartment complex would be to cut down her water use in the first place, right? Because if she can't do this, if everything is not, the wastewater is not separated out, she should think of retrofitting. See, what we call retrofitting is things we can do after it's built, right? So one thing we can do is we use these aerators and taps. So these are called low flow fixtures. So a typical tap, when you open out, you can try measuring. It actually lets out almost 20 liters a minute. If you leave a tap open for 1 minute, it is usually the flow rate is between 15 to 20. But when you add these aerators, we cut it down to 4 to 6 liters a minute. So that is the kind of consumption, because when you're brushing your teeth, you leave it on even for a few seconds. The first thing one thing she can do in an already built apartment is fit these aerators in all her taps. That will cut down the water use, especially when you're washing dishes or, so she can do that. She can cut down her water use. And if she doesn't have a dual flush water closet, that's another thing that she can install. And what we do is typically in an apartment, if it's only a 4-flat unit, it's easier to talk to. Ideally, she should talk to all the apartment owners and do the water treatment holistically. Yes, because that would be the best for everybody. So I think she should lobby for that. And if she can't get through, then she can, look at that. Because she can explain how much water they will all save because of this, right? I mean, the wastewater we use for gardening, we use for flushing. So a lot of things you can do.
So that's where I think the next question of hers is about. She says she already has a air water generating unit for drinking and kitchen water needs.
That's great.
She likes to know other ways of recycling water, washing machine and kitchen wastewater. Like you said.
Again, in an apartment, we've seen that the kitchen wastewater and washing machine water can be let out directly into the garden. So, but in an apartment, is that feasible for her? She has to see. If otherwise it's in a balcony, but it's difficult depending on how much space she has. If she has a balcony with a lot of plants, she can ask the plumber to come in, connect her kitchen waistline, but she'd need a grease trap for the kitchen. And a lot of maintenance will be needed. But the washing machine water can be taken directly to plants, actually. So with the grease trap. But she should make sure she's using organic soaps, so there's not a lot of chemicals in the water. But she can directly direct it to the plants, even if I'm not sure which floor she's on. It'll be easier to do it if you're on the ground floor. So these are things, she can even get back to us once she checks all of this.
Of course, I think she will. Definitely. So
Because it's
this
hard
is
to say without knowing exactly.
I know it involves analyzing a lot of factors,
Technicality,
Yeah, I
yeah.
get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, here is another question. This question is from Meenakshi Ramesh. She is a trustee of Citizen Matters. So she says, I used porotherm hollow blocks for most of our walls since they are supposed to be energy efficient. But one wall developed a crack, and now the water runs through the entire wall, and we had multiple leakages since the entire wall was hollow. How can we guard against it?
Um, this porotherm block, I think the first thing she can do is to check where the crack is, because porotherm is actually a block that doesn't have just one hollow; it has multiple hollows, and each hollow is actually there's a bracing. I mean, there's like brick between each hollow. So unless the crack is right through each and every hollows, it won't. Typically, we haven't seen this happen in the wall itself. So
Okay.
I feel could it be in the plaster? So she needs to do a little bit of investigation to see where is the crack. I mean, unless the wall has been badly damaged, I can't visualize a crack running through the wall because it's not one hollow. So it's got to
Okay.
stop somewhere. It could be leaking through the plaster or the joints. Water might be seeping in through the joints from outside, and it could be in the plaster. When you plaster a wall, that water seepage is continuous. But
Okay.
porotherm is not a continuous monolithic thing. So I think some amount of investigation would be best to first see
Okay.
where the crack is, and then we
Okay.
can deal with it. Then we can also put her in touch with porotherm, because we work with the manufacturers a lot. This is one of the materials we use a lot. So we can put her in touch with the manufacturers. They are very happy to come and take a look. So if it's a flaw in their product, they would be happy to. So we can do that. I can put her in touch with
Great.
them also. If she finds the crack in the porotherm wall,
Great.
so
Okay.
some investigation I think she should do.
Okay. Got it. So there's another question from A. Bruno. He's the director of Narcotics Control of Bureau. He says, "How do I overcome the lack of information, especially about alternative raw materials?"
Yeah, it is actually an issue because people don't know about it unless we are,
Mm.
talking about it, and we inform them only when they come to us, right? I mean, they find us
Yeah.
and come, and then we inform them of these alternate materials. Thing is,
Mm.
I think there's a lack of awareness, lack of knowledge. I think there needs to be a lot of public awareness campaigns. People have to be educated. I feel architecture students have to be educated. So when they come and design, they are aware of this. So we are actually, we would like to, I mean, we were conducting seminars and all earlier before the pandemic. Now, of course, but I think this education has to go on. So people are, even the low VOC paints I mentioned, most people don't know about it, right? It's only when people come
True.
to us and say they want, then we give them the information. But there are these actually, there is this website called Green Pro that lists all the green products, not all, but at least some of them. So he can get some idea if he searches for Green Pro ratings. Green Pro rating is a green product rating. It's
Okay.
put up by the Indian Green Building Council. So he can get some amount of information from there, but really, I think it needs to reach. I mean, just education has to happen. So
Okay.
we need to see how we can do that effectively. Yeah.
Great. Uh,
Or the
that's
government
good
should,
info.
I think government should actually, sorry to interrupt. I think
No,
the
yeah.
government should insist, or, they should have, some way of kind of, letting the public know. Or,
Sensitizing people.
yeah, it could
Mhm.
be even your zoning approvals. They should look at what kind of materials. Right now, they don't do any of that. So that would be one way to get that.
In known scenario.
Yeah.
Okay, here is another question from Mr. Pichumani. He's a reader. He asks, "How do we improve indoor air quality? And is what is the need to build green homes in Chennai?" Just putting out
What is
both
the
the questions
need?
at once.
Okay, what is the need to build green homes? Is it second one?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, one.
Okay,
Yes.
so the first question, how do we improve indoor air quality? Is like I said, one way to do it is make sure your house has enough uh, breeze,
Ventilation.
ventilation,
Mhm.
and light. Because sunlight is a powerful antibacterial agent. I mean, it actually kills microbes, right?
Yeah.
So sunlight and ventilation is important. Next, right now there are a lot of these air purifying plants which we specify. So they're supposed to absorb all the impurities from the air. NASA has a good list of these plants. If he's looking for a comprehensive list, we've actually taken some of that which are native to Chennai. So we have a list that is native. So air purifying plants inside actually help.
Could
And
you
then
name one or two examples? Could you have
even money plant is an air purifying plant. Snake plant
okay.
is. So lots of, actually, there are a lot of plants that are very native and we don't know. But even keeping a small money plant at your desk will actually improve the air quality. So they absorb impurities. So that's a common thing that we do. In fact, for a huge office space that they wanted to go for a green interior rating. So there are all these ratings offered by the Indian Green Building Council. So there's one rating where if your building is already built, you've occupied, but you want to make the interior spaces green. So you can actually do it and apply for a rating. So there we suggested each employee, there are about 500 employees. So each of them now they have a money plant at their desk. So they're the easiest, and it's their responsibility to look after the plant, right? I mean, it's as simple as that, easy to maintain. And then the kind of materials you use inside. We talked about low VOC paints, right? If you're using chemical-based products, they all off-gas, especially paints. I mean, the off-gassing goes on for years. You may not know it, but that paint smell, because they started using these chemicals so the paints would dry faster. But so he needs to look for materials that are less harmful, right? Natural materials like mud, things like that. So all that will improve the air quality also. And especially like mud is very breathable, but when you look at cement, once it gets damp, then you see that dampness there. So there's a lot of mold formation, that leads to poor air quality, right?
Okay.
So, but look at mud as a alternate, it's breathable. So when it gets wet, it dries out. So those are, much better for us. And then his other question on what is the need for green homes in Chennai. Chennai is very congested as a city. I mean, if right now I'm staying on the 12th floor of an apartment. If I just look at it, I see the amount of concrete, right? I mean, I imagine 50 years from now, when all these buildings will be demolished, where will the concrete go? It's not biodegradable by any means, you know glass.
Yeah.
It's not, it's all going to be, we're going to be living on this pile of concrete mass, like 50 years from now, because there's no place, because we're not using materials that go back into the earth, right? So we are actually developing in the wrong way in Chennai. So Chennai is still, I mean, it has a long way to go. There are not much of outdoor spaces for me to, enjoy the outdoors. There's not much of tree cover, and things are like developing everywhere, right? You look at Palikarnai Marsh, and people are like blindly developing the city because everybody wants to move into Chennai. And then you look at these, even the 12th floor building, but there are 30 floors, 25 floors. So earlier on, there used to be one independent house with maybe 5 people living on a plot size of 2 grounds or 3 grounds. Now it is like, in a same 3 ground plot, there are probably about 30 people living. So where will they get the groundwater from, right? And the cars, the number of cars. I mean, there's like a lot of reason in Chennai to kind of rethink the way we build. So I think city, any metro, I think Chennai has a long way to go. So we do need conscious choices, to be made. So yeah.
Okay, I'm taking another question
Yeah.
from. Okay. So, how do you make your flooring space green? This is a question from Shubha Kirtana again.
Yeah, I think she's asking about the floor, right? The floor finish. Yeah, like unfortunately in the city with the high rises, we are kind of left with only concrete as a slab. But the kind of finish that you use on it, you could look at natural stones versus vitrified tiles. Vitrified tiles are the normal tiles that we see. That's not only bad for our feet, but it's also coming, most of these come from Gujarat. So the pollution in transportation, again, it goes back to the native materials, right? When you source it locally, you spend less environmentally. And also, so instead of that, if she uses natural stone, which is what we advocate, instead of a manufactured material, any natural stone that's locally sourced, like the
Mm.
temple granite here or even Kadapa, it's close by. So these natural stones are good for us, healthier for us, they last long, and they're better for the environment. So those things, and like I said, Athangudi tiles are a good flooring
Mm.
option if you want to go green. Of course, red oxide floor, it's still cement with pigment mixed in it. That art is also fading now, but again, we're seeing a surge, it coming back. But what that does is you don't do any unnecessary tile on top of it. So you are
Yeah.
using less material. So that would also be green. So these are the few ways to, go green in Chennai in terms of the floor space.
Great. So we have covered most of the questions, just one or two left. This is from Kenneth again. He says, is net zero building still an unattainable dream? But I want to know, what is a net zero building?
Yeah, okay. So a net zero building is when whatever you consume, you kind of produce. What you produce, you consume. You don't consume more than you produce. So a net
Okay.
positive building would be you produce more and you consume less, right? That's like, but when you're,
Yeah.
what we are all doing is we are consuming more and we are giving back less. Right? As a net negative buildings is what we are. So making it net zero is the first step. And
Okay.
net zero, we feel right now from the calculations, it is attainable, but there's a cost that comes into it. So we try to get very close. We've gotten to like 70% of it. Because one thing net zero is mostly it's energy and water. So whatever energy we use, are we able to produce it ourselves? So which means solar, right? You have your solar plant and you calculate your electricity bill over like 2 months. And if you're able to generate as much solar that's equal to what you're consuming, you're net zero. So
Yeah.
first, I would reduce my electricity consumption by not putting air conditioning, by designing the building better, by having your LED lights or whatever, and then I would use solar to augment the electricity because you reduce your electricity use. Now you need less solar, and if you're able
Okay.
to install as much solar as you consume, it becomes a net zero. So again, the only thing factor that will come in is the cost of the solar. So if you can afford that, then it is attainable. But
Great.
there will be an initial cost factor. Even with water, what we are seeing is we advocate, even with the rains that we've seen in Chennai the last 2 years, there's a potential to collect a lot of the rainwater. So much of rainwater goes to waste. So we try and tell people that, see, this is the amount of water that's falling on your roof in one rain. And here's the amount that you can collect in your sump, if you're able to filter it from the roof and direct it to your sump. So we are able to see most of like about 9 to 10 months of for one individual family living in an independent house can actually use rainwater if it is collected properly. And then there's another like, so that 75% of your water needs. And if you're able to, treat the wastewater and reuse it for things like flushing, where there's a lot of people who are not open to it yet. So, there's a lot of factors that play into it. But if you're able to do that, then it's the water cycle, right? So, how much? I think all this is driven by actual calculations. You can sit down and calculate the amount of water you're consuming and see how you can, kind of like augment it and make sure that you're producing that much water or not
Okay.
taking water from outside. That I would say is net zero, right? It's a cycle that you're able to, use the rain and the groundwater that you have and kind of live on it. So I think net zero buildings are attainable, but it's still not the norm. I mean, it needs to be looked into in much more detail in terms of calculations and then the cost. How can we make sure the costing is also down? So incentives from the government also could help with all these
I was
tech.
about to say that. I think it's a
Yeah.
collection of many
Yes.
things, and
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
stakeholders should be interested
Yes.
to do this, including the government that should give out the incentives,
Right.
and the
Yes.
mindset of people that should be
Yes.
changed.
Changed.
So
Yeah.
it's a long way to go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's one thing I wrote about how to live sustainably, in the sense if you're off the grid completely, you have your own space, you're not relying on external factors, then you're like 100% net zero, right? I mean, ultimately you have to probably grow your own food because that's, to some extent you can and you should. So we're looking at micro urban gardens now, even on rooftops. So whatever little bit, that we can do. It's a little difficult in the cities, but, whatever we can do out of it. How do you live, truly sustainable? So you're not taking too much from the environment.